have them living side by side, sharing the same facilities with them. They're afraid because African American brothers and sisters are standing up and getting serious about their rights in politics and property and education. And they're afraid because young people are no longer buying into the state-controlled bullshit that used to dominate everything that we did for the previous 20, 30, 50 years before. So it's control and it's fear. It's also money. It's also absolutely money. You know, when I was talking about the victims of cannabis oppression, one of the things I almost put on there, and I sometimes feel this, is I feel sorry for the cops. I really do. There ought to be a career in the world where you join a civil defense force and your job really is to protect the weak and the vulnerable and to make sure the bad guys don't get out of hand. There ought to be a job like that. But I cannot say that law enforcement in Texas is like that now. How in the world can you create a credible law enforcement system where the basis of their funding is pay to play? How in the world can you say you're going to put cash per capita subsidies on arrests and not expect them to go out and maximize those arrests and to pop the easiest victims they can find? When you have law enforcement in an assembly line fashion, which is a pay for production, you can absolutely rest assured justice just left the building. And lastly, remember that we maintain a strong federal presence in this state. When some of us were kids and the Cold War was still on, Texas boasted some of the largest and most populous military installations in the country. It made this state a whole lot of money. And then the Russians went and gave up, and the powers that be didn't know what to do. And then they found out they intensified a drug war and began to militarize police enforcement and began to militarize healthcare, that they could create a military infrastructure of the DEA along the border with Mexico and throughout Texas, bringing outposts of law enforcement, bring federal dollars, bringing jobs, and they're not going to say no to that. So here's what you can do. Absolutely, I agree. We must start locally. Our fight begins locally. It begins not only in the state government, but in your local city, town governments, your councils. Go to your town councils. If you're not from Austin, go to your locality and demand that they institute a cite and release policy for possession 1 ounce or less. Cite and release. No incarceration for minor possession. If you're called to jury duty and the prosecutor asks you, are you okay with delivering a sentence for a drug charge, you look in the eye and say, absolutely, yes, sir. And then when you go into those chambers to deliberate, you hold that jury up and you nullify that decision. And they have no right to your mind. If they ask you if you're going to play along, you say absolutely, and then you get in there and you fuck it up. And trust me, it is a fight because the people who manage the drug war are your enemies. Did you realize that the law enforcement, the smiling, friendly, happy law enforcement here all have best cameras on today? Yeah! They're photographing you. Fuck them! They're photographing you because what? They're photographing you, comrades, because you're free! That's why they're photographing you. They're photographing you for your own safety. They just need to make sure your picture gets taken at this rate so nothing wrong happens. Do you believe that? No! No, you don't believe that. So understand this. There are powers that be that don't want you to have these rights. And your fight occurs at the local level, and it can also occur at the federal level. I agree the federal government is a scary monster, but you must not give up on it. Because there are representatives in Congress and people sitting in the appropriate committees in the U.S. Congress who may yet be our allies. Try to reach out to all of your representatives. Right? And I want you to think locally, but I want you to act nationally. You currently reside in one of the least democratic state governments in the nation. We have no referendum. We have no right of petition. We only get a shot at this once every 2 years. And the fact of the matter is, legislation that makes out of its primary committees is likely to die in the Calendars Committee, which most of us don't even know exists because the Lieutenant Governor appoints hand-picked operatives for those committee selections, and they're not going to do anything they're not told to do. But we try and we push, and if we can get a majority, then maybe that goes. But meanwhile, you have to think nationally as well. The pressure on these people will start here, but it also starts in Denver, and in Seattle, and in Portland, and in Los Angeles, and in San Francisco.